All right, let's work through lesson 7.5. Excuse me. Algebraic and graphical connections of polynomial functions. So this is kind of a continuation of what we did in class today. During the lesson we did in class today, we saw that the degree of the polynomial lets us know or forecasts the maximum number of factors that the polynomial can have. So we're going to be real clear about this. It's the maximum number, not the exact number. Okay, so it can't have more factors than that. What we're going to do now is we're going to factor each of the following polynomial functions whose equations and graphs are provided, and then we're going to set each factor equal to 0 and solve them for x. So we use the techniques that we just talked about in the previous lesson to factor these and now solve them, okay? Because if we're wanting to know where the zeros are, that means we want to know where this equals 0. And so when you have a polynomial that's equal to 0, our best way to solve that is to factor it. So in this case, we're going to look first and foremost, your first step always is going to be to check for greatest common factor. So as we're looking at this polynomial, do the terms have anything in common that we could factor out? And I can factor out a -2 and an x out of every term. And so when I factor out a -2x or divide out a -2x, when I take -2x cubed and divide out a -2x, I'm left with a positive x squared. And then I'm left with a positive x, and I'm left with a -2, because 4 divided by -2 would give us a negative. I'm going to fix that because that looks like I pulled out a positive 2, okay? We are still solving this to be equal to 0. Once you've done the first step and you've factored out the greatest common factor, you always have to look at what's left in the parentheses to see if it can be factored further. And now we have a quadratic trinomial, which means we're going to do the a times c and do the little x method over here if you want. We've got 1 times -2 gives us -2, and they've got to add to +1. So that's going to be a +2 and a -1. So that leaves us with, this is swing and divide, so except we don't have to divide by anything. So this is going to be x plus 2 and x minus 1. And so now we have 3 factors, which makes sense because as a cubic polynomial, right, our degree is 3, we should have 3 factors, 1, 2, 3. Then to solve it, all we do is we set each of those individual factors equal to 0. -2x equals 0, x plus 2 equals 0, x minus 1 equals 0, and we solve from there. Okay, and what we realize is that those should be the places where the graph crosses the x-axis, right? So we've got the 0 at x equals 0, we've got a 0 at x equals -2, and we've got a 0 at x equals 1. So checks out with the graph, it matches. What is the y-intercept of this graph? The y-intercept of this graph is 0, 0, right there. And the constant term in this equation, if you look at the original equation, also 0. There was no constant term, so our constant term was 0. All right,